Well, if you're a little bit like me, you might have grown up playing neighborhood games like kick the can or freeze tag or leapfrog or hopscotch. But one of the games that I remember playing as a kid is called Follow the Leader. And the premise of Follow the Leader is excruciatingly and devastatingly simple. The idea is that one of the kids goes out and does a bunch of crazy stuff, and the rest of the kids try their best to imitate them. Now, if you are a kid, maybe that seems like a compelling and challenging game. But as we get a little older, that starts to seem a little boring. And so eventually we trade in Follow the Leader for more compelling and sophisticated and challenging ways to use our time. Or at least that's what we tell ourselves. Sometimes I think that in actuality, all we do is trade one game of Follow the Leader for a more subtle and sophisticated and hidden version of the exact same thing. Peter Thiel, in his book 0 to 1, talks about two different kinds of progress: horizontal and vertical. And the idea of horizontal progress is simply the idea of progress as conventionally conceived. It's the idea of taking what works and doing more of it. Taking something that works in the first world and bringing it to the third world. Taking what works in the developed world and bringing it into the developing world. It's the dream of globalization. It's the idea that every year we get more McDonald's, more Pizza Huts, more Burger Kings and big screen TVs, more people wearing Levi's and drinking Coca-Cola. And the only problem with this vision is that it's completely unsustainable. If all we do in the next 50 or 100 years is export the lifestyle of an average North American to the rest of the globe, then it will take 4 Earths to supply that level of consumption. And if that's the direction we're headed, then we're headed for political and economic and ecological disaster. When looking at the scope and the scale of those problems, Peter Thiel says it would take a miracle, maybe even hundreds or thousands of miracles, for us to escape the century alive. But he goes on to say, fortunately, we are the one species that has proven itself capable of creating miracles. And what he means by that is technology, but not just technology in the sense of something that we already understand or have already done. Technology in the sense of something genuinely new possibilities for individuals and societies and communities and the world. New ways of relating to transportation and energy and to our planet and to each other. Thiel calls this vertical progress. And the problem with vertical progress is that it's incredibly hard. Because we understand horizontal progress. We understand that you just take something that works and you do more of it. You take a big screen TV and you make it bigger. You can make an algorithm to do that. We can automate that process. But vertical progress requires a genuine creative leap, an imaginative insight, and a reach for something that has never existed before. And we don't understand how that works. And that means that we can't create an algorithm for it. We can't automate it. We can't bottle it and put it on the shelf. We can't mass produce it. And that puts us in an interesting and tough predicament, because it means that the thing seemingly most essential to our survival is the thing that we least understand. Now, although we don't know how to mass produce vertical progress, we do have an idea about how to encourage it. And we encourage it through passionate and enthusiastic engagement. When individuals are passionately and enthusiastically engaged with the challenges of the world around them, with the risk and opportunities and possibilities of the future ahead, that's when we seem to see these genuinely new insights start to emerge and new things start to come to the surface. And so the big question facing us is, how do we become more engaged? And a lot of that is going to come down to how we think and how we talk about these questions. This is why I think that one of the most dangerous and potentially destructive ideas that we have is the concept of the developed and the developing world. Because in this one concept, we disempower both groups and we tell the majority of humanity they have nothing significant to offer our future. In this concept, we're saying to the developed world, you're developed, you're done. You're complete. You've attained everything there is to attain. You've achieved everything there is to achieve. And all you need to do is wait for the rest of the world to catch up. And at the same time, we're telling the developing world that all of the creative and energetic and brilliant minds that you're producing have one simple role. And it's to imitate what's already been done, to play a sophisticated game of follow the leader. One of the reasons that this idea is so destructive is because of the fact that innovation is often contextual. And what I mean by that is that your situation, your circumstance, your environment, your context, your unique perspective and vantage point means that you can see things that no one else in the world can see. And this means that you have the ability to create things that no one else in the world can create. A few years ago, I was traveling through Nepal, and I stayed with a family in Kathmandu. And as they showed me their city and the mountains around it, I began to realize that we had had very different experiences. I grew up in America with constant and reliable electricity, with highways that had speed limits of 75 miles per hour and a wide open geography. And they grew up and they lived in a culture and a world in which no one had electricity for more than 6 or 7 hours a day, where you couldn't go above 25 miles per hour because the roads simply couldn't support it, and in a landscape dotted with thousands of temples. And the thing is not just that we've had these different experiences and different lifestyles, it's the ramifications of those experiences. Because when you don't have consistent electricity, then you don't really have refrigeration. And when you don't have refrigeration, it changes the way you eat and the way you shop and the way you relate to your neighborhood. When you don't have reliable electricity, then the most consistent form of information technology is paper. And when you can't go above 25 miles per hour, then it changes the way your city is structured and the very way you look at the world. And what I'm saying is that if you live in Kathmandu, Nepal, or Lagos, Nigeria, or the Cayman Islands, that you can see things that people in Silicon Valley or New York City or Washington, D.C. will simply never be aware of. And because of that, you have abilities that no one else has. And you can create things that no one else can create. But you're not going to do that if you're not looking for them. And you're not going to do that if you don't recognize the significant role you play in cultivating and bringing those new things into existence. As we look at the century ahead of us, humanity needs all the perspectives and all the vantage points we can get. And that means that anything that silences or hides or quiets those vantage points is doing a disservice to humanity. The developed world needs to recognize that they haven't finished. They're not done. They don't need to simply repeat what's been successful before, more apps and more social networks. They need to turn their attention to the big challenges of humanity's future. And the developing world needs to recognize the significant role they play in creating things that are better than anything that has been created before, more unique, more individual, more diverse. We all need to realize that the world is not a giant game of follow the leader. None of us have reached the end of history. We all stand on the verge of incredible possibilities. We all have the responsibility to reach out and help build that future. and it starts with realizing that we all live in the developing world. Thank you.